Edgar Cayce on the Soul Realms. Harvey A. Green's research continued. The first region. As we move further from the review process, we become more fixed in the mental realms. We leave the mental material overlap and move more into that part of the mental which we will call the first region of reality after death. Rudolf Steiner, in his book Theosophy, discussed at great length successive realms he called the first region, second region, and so forth. Now, we are fully invested in reality beyond physical materiality, and those periods of rest in which we approximate sleep are behind us. We will, from here and throughout the spiritual realms, now experience ceaseless activity, since life, like the spirit which it animates, is continuous. This region is ruled by those things which comprise such emotions as our urges, passions, sensual love, and all that is connected with them. Here in the first region we begin to deal with our unfinished emotional business left over from our past incarnation. Those who lived by and were ruled mostly by their emotions will have more difficulty in this realm than those who were not. Those who are still fixated on earthly desires will feel an expansion of those yearnings and will suffer by virtue of the inability to satisfy them directly. In any event, the souls will not move on until all of their material fixations are laid aside. Some of the desires, Steiner notes, will be purged permanently and others will be left aside in safekeeping, to be dealt with at a more appropriate time. This laying aside is a concept which may be alien to some because we think of spiritual progression as an overcoming rather than a continuous experience. In the first region, as in others, we deal with those parts of ourselves which are ruled by forces which emanate throughout that realm. We are not required to deal successfully with all of those things. We will pass this way more than once, so we can set aside those things that can better be dealt with some other time and return later to deal with it. We may not pass from the first region carrying our emotional ties to materiality, so we will deal with what we can and move on. We cannot choose to set aside that which we are able to successfully deal with simply because the challenges are difficult. Our soul forces united with this region will not permit us to delude ourselves in such a way. Here in the first region we live in communities with those with whom we share a like sympathy. Helen Greaves, Ruth Montgomery, Edgar Cayce, Rudolf Steiner, Emanuel Swedenborg, and Ruth Mattson Taylor all discussed these groups, communities, or societies at length. We share relationships with souls with whom we have done so throughout our travels through reality. There are those in every realm who are part of our soul group, those with whom we have shared experiences, and those who will remain our soul family throughout our experiences. Our communities in the first region appear to us much the same as they did in the earth realm, but they appear slightly different to each inhabitant. As we grow in a region, its appearance changes, but this is so gradual it goes largely unnoticed. All experiences are for learning. Here we deal largely with our choices in our most recent earth incarnation. We do not merely deal with observation but we actually inhabit the experience in all of its potential. This may be difficult to understand, so let us again explain by illustration. In the earth realm we may have had an experience of helping another to grow. This choice may have caused us difficulty to a varying degree and may have opened a door to countless choices along our journey. The experience could have been complicated and spread over a long period of time. In the first region we may experience the glory of growing fields of magnificently beautiful flowers. Such flowers would not only be attractive in appearance but beautiful beyond explanation to our soul. We may experience the radiance, the peace, the glorious symphony of creation at play in the fields and then we may find ourselves the keeper of those fields. The flowers, whose beauty we now experience on every level, find their growth and nourishment at our hand. We are the gardeners of the fields, the symphonic conductors of beauty. We share an exclusive relationship with what they represent. Likewise, we deal with our not-so-glorious choices by having the opportunity to be changed by their true essence. For those who chose to experience materiality more passively, the first region is more difficult than for those who made inappropriate choices. As much can be learned from unsuitable choices as from correct ones. But nothing can be learned from making no choice. If we lived a life of indifference in the earth realm, Steiner notes that in the first region we experience a helpless and useless state of being where we cannot participate in life around us. We have a burning desire to associate, to experience, but we are not guided by impelling forces that draw us into such experiences. We experience our own indifference and then see the possibilities all around us from which we may make choices. The desire to participate in any of our possible choices wells up inside of us because we see the full potential of those options never taken. We may not see the earthly potential of the choices not made, instead we see the emotional, mental, and spiritual possibilities. For a while, or what may seem like 1,000 years, we find our experience very difficult. Then finally, When we have fully experienced our indifference, we begin to set it aside to be combated after we have gained more protective light for the task. As we deal with our earthly experiences, good and bad, unfolding in their full potential, we glean the best and overcome or set aside the worst. All with whom we associate help us in our relationships to reality. We meet those with whom we feel close and others with whom we feel distant. Our clarity of vision and our relationships are in proportion to our affection. We have only the most limited use of the laws of cause and effect at this time. Life here is accented by the fact that we cannot change one aspect of our relationships with others. The lack of the full force of cause and effect seems so natural that we do not question it or even lament its absence. As in the earth realm, we are surrounded by angels and other spirits, but their presence is somewhat more discernible to the senses in this dimension. Swedenborg and Steiner agree that as we rise into finer dimensions, those permeating from yet higher dimensions are more apparent to us. We all work together to experience the spiritual potential of our activities and are protected, guided, and healed by the angels of mercy. From the first region we take trips, as described by Helen Greaves, into higher dimensions and return again to use those experiences in our communities. This is not so unusual when one realizes that the same things are experienced in our sleep state in the earth realm. Frequently we move out of our earthly bodies in sleep and travel to spiritual realms. This is accomplished under the guidance and protection of souls and spirits who have taken this as their ministry. The only difference is that after death, we do not sleep and we vividly recall the experience of having traveled to another dimension. Greaves notes that, when appropriate, those who minister to us always come to us. They change their own vibrations to be sympathetic with the realm to which we are to travel. Like two tuning forks, we are drawn to their resonance and eventually vibrate at the same rate. This process transports us to that realm with which we have been helped to develop a sympathy, where we are ultimately instructed and refreshed. When our experience is complete, we return to the first region where we once again resonate to this dimension. Such a form of travel is not limited to the first region and, in fact, exists in almost all dimensions of reality. It may seem hard to conceive of, but before we leave we expand to fill out all of the first region. Each individual in the region occupies the same time and space but interacts only in accord to those with whom each has had a relationship. The second region. Passing on from one region to another is not as traumatic as the exit from the physical earth. It is not as outwardly abrupt nor are we as likely to become as fixed in these regions as we did in materiality.